Here's an exercise demonstration video for the single kettlebell clean. This is one of my favorite movements because it demands a very rapid extension of all the muscles of your lower body. So you'll use every muscle along the legs and in the trunk as you dynamically use the power from down there to translate it into the kettlebell and bring the kettlebell up to your shoulder. Now this is definitely a movement that's hard on the wearable devices. So I'm only going to demonstrate today on my right side, but if you're practicing this one and I want you to practice left and right, make sure you take these devices off before you give them a smash with the kettlebell. Now the kettlebell clean, I'll demonstrate the full movement to start and then we'll break down the entire sequence. When you do the kettlebell clean, the weight should start a little bit out in front of you. If you're standing directly above your kettlebell, you won't be able to get the proper initial setup. So with the kettlebell out in front of you, centered, so the kettlebell and your 2 feet form a triangle, as soon as I pick this up, it's going to start to swing backwards a little bit, because right now it's a little bit in front of me. It'll swing until it's underneath me, and then it'll go a little bit beyond. And that moment is going to be where I trigger and drive my body up in that kettlebell clean. The full kettlebell clean in slow motion is going to use the legs, the arms, the shoulder, and the kettlebell is going to end up right up here on the front of the shoulder. At full speed, this is what it looks like. And that way the kettlebell's brought up to my shoulder. Now this gets its name because the kettlebell has gone from the floor to my shoulder cleanly, which means it hasn't touched any point on my body along the way. This is from weightlifting back in the day when they had different weightlifting competitions than they do now. For the kettlebell clean, to translate that powerful explosive muscle of the leg through the core and into the shoulder, we have a specific sequence of movements. That sequence can be thought of as a jumping motion from right here, so I'm rapidly using the muscles of my legs to achieve a straight position with my legs and hips. Excuse me. If I didn't have any load and I did this powerful movement, I would probably propel myself up off the ground a little bit because it's the same muscles that we use to create a jumping motion. So when we're in this bent over position with the flat back and the organized shoulder, we can then pop the hips in that jumping motion to start that kettlebell in its upward movement. If we do just the hips, the kettlebell will probably float out away from us and become heavy in front. So we'll want to do our second motion, which is a pulling, a shrugging motion with the shoulder, and then a pulling motion with the arm. And that keeps the kettlebell closer to our body rather than drifting out in front of us. So first motion is that jumping movement. Once the hips are fully extended, maybe I've even gone on my toes a little bit, now I'm going to pull with the arm and pull with the shoulder. And that's going to keep the kettlebell close. And that leaves me with my final position. From a high elbow, I need to dynamically transition to a low elbow, so that kettlebell will be up on the shoulder. And this is as simple as making sure that my elbow comes as close to my body as rapidly as possible. If you recognize this front support position, it's the same as how we hold a kettlebell for a lunge, a split squat, a squat, or any kind of overhead pressing. It's that same stacked position. So when you do your kettlebell clean, we're going to pop the hips, pull with the arm, and bring that elbow rapidly around to that low position. When you do this one just right, it's not too much of a wallop against the front of your shoulder. But if you're out of sequence, it can really feel like a punch right here on the shoulder. It's not very comfortable. Keep this in mind because it's good feedback for you as you practice the kettlebell clean. When you're doing the kettlebell clean, after you've used the power of your hips and you've pulled with your shoulder and pulled with your arm, notice how close it is to the front of the chest. This last motion, as we bring the elbow under, you can modulate how quickly that kettlebell rotates by how tightly you squeeze your grip. And I know this is getting a little bit detailed, but I want you to know all the information so that this doesn't feel uncomfortable for you to practice. After we've done the hips, the shoulder, the arm, as we're starting to bring that elbow underneath, I'm going to squeeze with my hands really tightly in order to arrest the rotation of that kettlebell and cause it to not slap against my arm too hard. It's a very small movement and it's very important that you time it properly, but you'll understand as you practice that if you squeeze that kettlebell, you can keep it from rotating so quickly and it won't hammer the front of your shoulder so much. As you're doing your kettlebell clean, here it is from the other side, bringing the power of the hips to the front of the shoulder in that jumping motion. And so this is really important that we're using the full speed and the full power of explosion of the legs. Boom. I like to think about this just like we talk about in the kettlebell swing, as though your lower body was hit by a taser from a police officer. Maybe right here, as soon as you got electrocuted, all your muscles went stiff right away. Boom. That's the power of contraction that we want to see. Remember, power has to do with the speed of your contraction. So when we're doing the kettlebell clean, I know it's a lot to think about and a lot going on, but we still want to bring that speedy, dynamic movement to the kettlebell clean. And that comes with practice. So if you're feeling like this one's beating up your shoulder or your arm, or it's too much for you to think about on today's workout, substitute the kettlebell swing instead of the kettlebell clean. You can do it with one arm or with two, but you can make sure to get that same power movement of the legs and hips in order to send that kettlebell upward. All right, thanks for listening today. I hope this was helpful for you, and you can keep me in mind as you do your future kettlebell cleans. As always, remember to keep your back nice and safe with the straight spinal alignment and the contraction in your core, and keep those shoulder blades retracted so that we're keeping the shoulders safe as well. When in doubt, make the movement simpler, keep yourself safe, because we never want an injury to derail our progress. All right, hope this was helpful. See you next time.